Well, hello and welcome to everyone joining us for this X Talks webinar. Today's talk is entitled Revolutionizing Obesity Clinical Trials, a Patient-Centric Approach. My name is Corey Stanton, and I'll be your X Talks host for this event. At this point, I'd like to thank Medpace, who developed the content for this presentation. Medpace is a scientifically driven, global, full-service clinical contract research organization, or CRO, providing phase 1 through 4 clinical development services to the biotechnology, pharmaceutical, and medical device industries. Medpace's mission is to accelerate the global development of safe and effective medical therapeutics through its high science and disciplined operating approach that leverages local regulatory and deep therapeutic expertise across all major areas, including metabolic disease, endocrinology, oncology, cardiology, central nervous system, and infectious diseases. And now let's take a moment to meet our panelists for today's presentation. One of our speakers today is Amanda Sylvester. Dr. Sylvester is a board-certified pediatric nurse practitioner with more than 16 years of clinical experience. She practiced pediatric endocrinology at Cincinnati Children's Hospital for over 10 years, managing the care of pediatric and young adult patients. Amanda completed her Doctor of Nursing practice at Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio, with a concentration in population health. And joining Amanda is Prudence King. Prudence King is a board-certified adult gerontology primary care nurse practitioner, providing support to the Medpace clinical operations and medical monitor teams focused on nephrology. Ms. King has over 28 years of clinical, renal, specialized experience, as well as extensive experience in public health. She also has experience in phase 1 through 3 global clinical trials in a variety of indications, including renal diseases, Alzheimer's disease, and obesity. And rounding out the panel today is Jennifer Brown. Jennifer Brown has a strong clinical background with 22 years in clinical research, including her work in clinical operations at Medpace as a CTM and a senior director. She has global project management experience of phase 1 through 4 trials in a variety of indications, including obesity, dyslipidemia, and diabetes, within more than 26 countries. And now, without any further ado, I'd like to hand the mic over to our first speaker today, Dr. Amanda Sylvester. Dr. Sylvester, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us today as we discuss a patient-centric approach to obesity clinical trials. We're grateful that you've chosen to spend your time with us and for recognizing the importance of a patient-centric approach in obesity trials. We'll start our webinar today by reviewing the significance of obesity and the current status of obesity both globally and in the United States. We will then discuss the advanced clinical practitioner role at Medpace and how we leverage this unique role to prioritize the patient and obesity trials. We will also cover the importance of balancing the patient-centric approach with protecting the study's endpoints. We will wrap up our time today by answering any questions from the audience in a roundtable format with all of our panelists. Obesity is a complex and global public health concern. Obesity results from the imbalance between daily energy intake and energy expenditure, resulting in excessive weight gain and fat accumulation. Obesity is a multifactorial disease and stems from a myriad of genetic, cultural, and societal factors. An association between genetics and obesity has been well established, identifying many genes contributing to the development of obesity. Additional causes and contributors leading to weight gain and obesity include reduced physical activity or limitations on physical activity, poor sleep or insomnia, endocrine disorders causing weight gain. Medications often have weight gain as a side effect, a decrease in energy metabolism, and also increased accessibility and consumption of excess carbohydrates and high sugar foods, or conversely, the challenge of not having access to fresh, healthy foods. People living with obesity often have poor quality of life. They tend to experience a reduced life expectancy and have additional chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, stroke, gallstones, fatty liver, sleep apnea, and even a higher risk for some cancers. Obesity is the second most common cause of preventable death globally, surpassed only by smoking. Total body fat, waist circumference, fat distribution, intra-abdominal pressure, and the age of onset of obesity all add to the risk of morbidity and mortality for people with obesity. Clinicians use tools and measurements such as a body mass index, waist and hip circumference, CT, MRI, and DEXA scans to help in the evaluation of the progression of disease in patients with obesity. These tools are also commonly used in obesity clinical trials. Most people we interact with who have obesity are not attempting to lose weight for the first time. Data indicates that people with obesity make multiple attempts at losing weight throughout their journey. Some experience mild success, but many either do not have significant weight loss or lose weight only to regain it. This frustrating weight loss cycle is physically and mentally challenging. As a result, many of these patients develop comorbid mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety. The treatment for depression and anxiety often includes the initiation of medications, and unfortunately, many of those medications are known to cause additional weight gain, further complicating their weight loss journey and leading to additional mental and physical effects. We've established the complexity of obesity. Now let's take a look at its global impact. The most recent global data on obesity, published by the World Health Organization in 2022, indicates that more than 1 billion people worldwide are currently living with obesity. At least 650 million adults, 340 million adolescents, and 39 million children are obese across the globe, and these numbers continue to rise year over year. The number of adults living with obesity has more than doubled since 1990, and the number of adolescents with obesity has quadrupled in that same time. The World Health Organization estimates that by 2025, approximately 167 million people, adults and children, will become less healthy, directly related to being overweight or obese. This is a global healthcare epidemic crossing all socioeconomic backgrounds. As you can see here, while there are areas that are not as deeply affected by obesity, obesity is truly a global healthcare problem. Data does indicate that there's a higher prevalence of obesity in older persons and females. However, the rates of global obesity have escalated in both males and females and across all age groups. In the United States, 1 in 3 adults and 1 in 5 children are obese. Over $147 billion are spent annually on obesity-related healthcare, representing a significant and growing economic burden on a potentially preventable disease. Rates of obesity are particularly rising in urban areas, which represents additional challenges related to healthy lifestyle choices, including access to safe places to exercise and play, and access to healthy food retailers and fresh foods. Approximately 40% of American households don't have close access to healthy food retailers, with only 1 in 10 children and adults getting the recommended amount of vegetables, and only 1 in 4 children and adults getting the recommended amount of physical activity. Obesity may seem simple on the surface, but with so many of these patients having significant comorbidities, obesity can actually be quite complex. With this in mind, the management of these patients needs to be tailored to their individual and unique needs, and their management requires a multi-pronged approach to be successful and sustainable. While management of obesity does involve weight loss, that's not the only focus of a treatment plan for a person with obesity. There also needs to be a focus on prevention strategies for maintenance of any progress made, as we have established that it's common for this population to experience a regain of weight. Developing new and positive habits is a key in successful obesity treatment plan and involves changes in their eating habits as well as behavioral interventions to challenge the mental aspect of obesity and combat the often negative experience they've had with attempts at weight loss in the past. Medications and surgery can also be helpful in the patient's overall weight loss journey. So let's take a closer look at the current medication landscape for obesity management. The typical screening measure for a person with overweight or obesity is the body mass index, or a BMI, which is calculated based on weight and height. A BMI of 25 to less than 30 is considered overweight, and a BMI of greater than or equal to 30 is categorized as obese. Obesity can be further broken down into classes 1 through 3. A BMI of 30 to less than 35 is class 1, 35 to less than 40 is class 2, and 40 or greater is class 3. Most of the obesity medications on the market and in development are targeted for a person with a BMI of 30 or greater. However, there are medications that may be used in people with a slightly lower BMI that's in the overweight category. Typically, this is the BMI of greater than or equal to 27 with comorbidities that we discussed earlier. Medication treatment for obesity is most effective when it's combined with an improved diet, increased physical activity, and some form of behavioral intervention, such as a health coach, personal therapy, or group support. A holistic approach will aid in sustained weight loss and overall improved health. This will be an important consideration as we discuss clinical trials in obesity, as improved eating habits and physical activity will likely have a positive impact on weight loss. While diet and exercise are an important component of the overall management for a person with obesity, this will need to be balanced with the efficacy of the trial. We'll come back to this a little bit later in our discussion. There are an increasing number of approved weight management medications available and being developed, and the demand is high. As a result, results continue to be promising for many who have struggled unsuccessfully in the past to lose weight. Many of these medications were first tested and approved in type 2 diabetes and has since shown efficacy in people with obesity without type 2. People with obesity wanting to start on these new drugs continue to face challenges, including coverage for these medications by insurance and consistent availability of these medications on the market. This imbalance of supply and demand leaves clinical trials for obesity with a continued demand and interest for participation. Many patients treated with new drugs for obesity are experiencing rapid weight loss. This rapid weight loss can bring additional challenges, including changes in electrolyte levels, mood or behavior changes, headaches, fatigue, and many others. These side effects and complications should be considered in the patient's education and management plan, and this is another consideration for mitigation strategies within our obesity trials. We've established that obesity is a complex disease process with many factors to be considered and addressed for successful outcomes. Similar to the clinical management of these patients, clinical obesity trials should account for these various factors when approaching their trial design. This starts early in the process, during planning, where the unique needs of this population are considered in protocol development, continues into the training of study team members and sites, and then into recruitment, where thorough evaluation is necessary to ensure appropriate patients are selected for entering into the trial, and persists all the way through the trial to the retention of these quality patients. Successful trials need to not only have adequate enrollment, but retention of those patients as well. It can be challenging to identify the best patients for participation in an obesity trial, but omitting this crucial evaluation can lead to confounding variables in evaluation of study data if it's not done well. The continued demand we discussed for obesity medications and continued interest in clinical trial participation as obtaining these medications continues to be challenging can lead to very rapid recruitment. This places us in a good position to identify the ideal participants for our studies. It's also why it's so important to have thorough evaluation of these patients to help ensure successful completion of the trial. While demand to enter these studies is high, unfortunately, a challenge of trials in obesity can be retention. This can be especially true if there's a placebo. Retention approaches should incorporate the needs of both the trial and the patient. With these potential challenges in mind, I'm now going to pass this over to Prue, who's going to talk more about how we have focused and found success in our obesity trials.
Thanks, Amanda. I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone for their attendance in this presentation. I'm very excited to present our role at Medpace to you all. As Amanda mentioned, obesity is a complex disease, with obesity trials becoming more prevalent, and we want to highlight one of the unique models that Medpace utilizes on studies. Globally, Medpace employs advanced clinical practitioners, or ACPs as we will refer to, who are registered nurses with advanced degrees and are highly trained in their therapeutic area of expertise. The concept of ACPs at Medpace was modeled after the successful integration of advanced practice nurses in the clinical setting. Advanced practice nurses have demonstrated the ability to develop a strong rapport with patients, as well as establish successful collaborative relationships with all members of a clinical team, including medical assistants, dietitians, social workers, and physicians. We are dedicated to supporting patients through their medical journey from the time of diagnosis throughout the course of their treatment. In essence, we are instrumental in the clinical setting, functioning as patient advocates and assisting the patients in navigating the complexities of the medical environment. As in clinical practice, at Medpace, the ACP works collaboratively with all functional areas of the study team to support the patients from entry into the study through study completion. The growth we have seen within our advanced clinical practitioner group across all therapeutic areas is aligned with the overall company growth, and it has been proven a successful model with focus on patient centricity. We recognize that advanced practice nurses have diverse experiences in a variety of clinical settings, and this unique clinical expertise is used specifically in a variety of ways on obesity studies. Understanding the day-to-day operations at the site level gives the ACP an advantage to be able to assist with site outreach to offer support with issues that arise. This includes answering protocol questions, review of concomitant medications and medical history as it pertains to eligibility, and early identification of enrollment and retention challenges. Using customized training material created by the ACP, we also ensure sites are trained on appropriately measuring some of the key indicators in obesity trials, such as consistency in weight measurements, waist and hip circumference, and protocol-specific assessments, for example. This slide summarizes our multifunctional engagement across sites, our in-house medical experts, and our clinical operations team, and we will delve deeper into these aspects on the following slides. This slide further demonstrates the multifunctional collaborations that ACPs have with study team members. This collaboration begins early, especially in obesity trials where startup tends to happen quickly. One of the first tasks ACPs prioritize is an in-depth protocol review where protocols are carefully evaluated for potential risks with specific risk mitigation strategies identified. Drawing on our past experiences with providing patient education, ACPs also thoroughly review many of the documents in study startup with a patient perspective in mind. For example, we work with our regulatory affairs group to ensure the language in informed consents not only reflects the language in the protocol, but is appropriate for the patient population. We also work closely with our patient recruitment and retention teams to create and review patient-facing materials to ensure clinical accuracy and cultural relevancy. Last, but certainly not least, ACPs collaborate with Medpace's medical monitor team on a variety of activities to ensure that patient safety remains a top priority. This includes reviewing laboratory and safety data in aggregate to help identify potential trends, as well as working with our data management team to prioritize query responses. We recognize that education is a primary principle in achieving quality outcomes. Therefore, it is one of the main points of focus for our advanced clinical practitioner team. ACPs prioritize the creation of study-specific therapeutic indication trainings tailored to the unique needs of the study team. In collaboration with the medical monitor, we perform thorough protocol review with ongoing training for amendments as needed. An incredibly unique aspect of our training program is the SIV and RMV prep meetings that we perform one-on-one with CRAs. The goals for these preps are to ensure CRA understanding of the protocol, particularly clinically related assessments, to provide guidance to CRAs for monitoring procedures related to study outcomes and objectives, all to ensure CRA preparedness when monitoring at sites. This dedicated time spent meeting individually with CRAs also reinforces the role of the ACP as a resource throughout the trial. Another way the ACP uniquely adds value to the study team is through our engagement in patient retention activities. We understand and have seen that patient retention is one of the greatest obstacles in obesity trials. Often looking for a quick fix to weight issues, patients often become disengaged if they are not seeing weight loss results in a short period of time. Prompting sites to discuss this possibility from the time of enrollment is key in setting expectations for the study. We understand that there is currently a very competitive landscape in the obesity trial space, and that patients have many options when selecting a weight loss study. This makes it important when a patient chooses to participate in our study that we ensure we retain them to the end. Depending on the study design, patients need to understand that if they are not losing weight early in the study, there may be an opportunity for them to receive a dose escalation later, which may produce greater weight loss results. However, we know that some patients may only receive placebo, and while not seeing the weight loss they wanted, they should be encouraged to continue their participation for the benefit of the trial. The ACPs recognize that subjects receiving placebo may be frustrated by lack of weight loss and not have a desire to complete the study. In focusing on the patient perspective in these instances, we prioritize providing strategies to retain these patients, ensuring that they understand the importance of remaining in the trial through the last study visit. Additional factors we have found that may help in retaining patients include offering an open label extension so that all participants have an opportunity to receive the investigational product. Retention may also become difficult if patients experience adverse events. In obesity trials, the most problematic adverse events are typically injection site reactions and gastrointestinal side effects, such as nausea and vomiting, diarrhea, stomach pain, and loss of appetite. As ACPs, we assist with patient issues related to tolerability by discussing use of sponsor-approved remedies, as well as helping sites navigate where the protocol has approval for IP holds or skipping of doses. We can also provide talking points to the sites so that they can encourage patients through these adverse events. We also discuss options with the sponsor to determine if the injectable IP would best be administered at the site or if patients will be taught to perform self-injection. There may be hesitancy amongst participants to self-inject, and our clinical expertise can be utilized to help mitigate this reluctance. Patients have also responded positively to receiving certain retention items at study milestones. We need to understand that certain items may confound endpoints, such as weight loss with a gym membership. So larger items such as this may be more appropriate following study completion. During the study at specific milestones, it would be more beneficial to provide patients with smaller items that they may find useful and helpful while encouraging a healthy lifestyle. At this time, I will hand it back to Amanda to continue discussing our patient-centric approach.
As part of our efforts to keep the patient and their experience at the core of our retention efforts, the advanced clinical practitioner often collaborates with our patient recruitment, retention, and information design teams in the development of patient-facing materials. These teams are comprised of talented team members, but not all of them have a clinical background. It's been our experience that sometimes materials are designed to look beautiful, but when we use a patient-focused lens in reviewing them, we may see that their layout and design may not work best for the patients who will be using them, especially for working with a population such as the elderly. By keeping the patient at the forefront of our mind in reviewing and designing documents, we can ensure that the materials the patient interacts with are appealing to them visually and also make the study they're participating in more understandable. Another aspect of patient-centric material development is ensuring that the documents and materials truly address and explain what we're doing in the specific trial. We want our patients to be well informed and understand what's expected of them, to reduce the likelihood that there's confusion and frustration as the patient progresses through the trial that could lead to dropout. Our team of advanced clinical practitioners have extensive experience and expertise to aid in understanding these patients. We draw on this knowledge and experience to keep the patient in mind during the design and implementation of all of our study materials. Let's discuss a few of these examples of what this looks like in practice. We start early in the study development process with a thorough review of protocol schemas and their schedule of assessments. We find that it's important to balance the wants and needs of the study sponsors with the feasibility of all of the activities being successfully executed by patients. Sometimes a team wants to include a long list of procedures to be done at a single visit. thinking that it'll be more efficient and maybe even easier on the patient. But when reviewing the schedule from the patient's point of view, it may not be the best approach. Understanding that the patient, we can help our team recognize that it may not be feasible or even most effective to have a patient do all the assessments at one time. Will they be physically and mentally able to complete multiple questionnaires, body measurements, blood draws, and then also complete a physical challenge such as a walk test, especially if most of the patients are elderly? What about if they have comorbidities? Will they need extra time? Is there an order of the events that will help make this experience better? By bringing the patient perspective to the review of the schedule of assessments, we can better ensure patients will be able to complete the needed tests successfully, protect study measurements, and the patient's experience. Another way we use patient-centric approach to study execution is leveraging our clinical experience to support the design of training materials. This includes training materials for patients and for sites to support how patients interact with study materials. Are the materials written in a way that the patients in the study can understand? Is there anything we're assuming that they already know or do? We need to provide a background to help make sure all of our patients in the study are starting from the same place in their training. This might look like providing a video demonstrating how to give an injection step by step to ensure patients know how to perform a task, and also ensure that it's done consistently across the study to improve data quality. We've worked closely with our internal design teams to create patient handbooks tailored to the needs of our specific study patients. Older patients might benefit from step-by-step instructions associated with each visit to prepare them for what they need to do before the visit, what they need to bring with them, and what to expect while they're on site for their visit. Patients that are new to a therapy, such as injections, might benefit from more detailed instructions on how to give the injection and safety for working with needles. Depending on our population demographics, we might recommend a video, written instructions, or maybe even both, and offer different ways to access these materials based on the needs of this group. As you can see, our team is uniquely equipped to both support the medical and operational teams to keep the patient at the center of our study design and execution. We also use our patient-centered focus in the development of training materials for sites and study team members. We provide the team members the tools to ensure they are equipped to train and interact with these patients in a way that allows the patient to feel supported and valued, while also making sure the team is able to obtain the data and results that are needed for the study. Providing additional training for sites on how to interact with patients on many of these patient-facing materials helps keep the patient at the focus. A way we've done this is a complementary document for the site team to go along with patient documents. We designed a patient education document that the site was to go over at the beginning of the study and check in on at regular intervals. We also then designed a site-facing guide with tips and ideas on how to present the education to the patient. This equipped the site teams to be prepared for how to interact with the patient on this material, and also provided a standardized approach across sites as to how the education would be delivered. We discussed earlier that patients with obesity, a holistic approach to their management, leads to the best sustained success. This includes treatments such as medication or surgery, and positive lifestyle changes like improving eating habits and increasing physical activity. While we want all of these patients ultimately to make the necessary physical and healthy eating changes to improve their overall health, we also recognize that making these changes during an obesity trial could lead to confounding results. By developing plans that address a standardized approach to diet and activity during the study period that are managed to the sites, we can address this variable. We can evaluate the objectives of the study and design a plan that can either create a limited but standardized diet and exercise plan that's implemented across all participants, or we might recommend that patients make no changes to their behavior at baseline for the duration of their participation. Either way, we can capitalize on this time that they're in the study to provide lifestyle education and empower these patients to implement positive changes after they've completed the study to allow for continued success. This approach balances the best interests of the patient and the study. We really look at the study with the patient in mind. We work to make sure their experience is as good as possible, understanding that part of what retains the patient in a study is their experience, including being able to understand what is happening and what is expected of them. We work with our colleagues across the study to ensure this understanding flows through all aspects of our study design and execution. We strive to help guide our teams to find the balance between study objectives and the patient's experience, while ensuring the plan is something that our patients can successfully complete. I'm going to hand this over to Jen, who's going to share more on how we protect endpoints while remaining patient-centric.
All right, thank you, Prue. Thank you, Amanda. I quickly just want to touch on how everything Prue and Amanda have already noted through this presentation regarding the advanced clinical practitioner role here at Medpace and how that supports endpoint protection and helps successfully execute obesity trials. As Prue noted, it starts at the very beginning with our ACP's involvement in reviewing the draft protocol design, the schedule of assessments and procedures, and providing input from a patient perspective and ensuring a sound patient-centric protocol really does set the stage for a successful trial. Additionally, working closely with clinical trial managers, medical monitors, and our patient recruitment and retention team to develop robust patient-facing materials specifically tailored to lifestyle counseling so we can ensure standardized physical activity and caloric consumption across all of our sites and all of our patients. Additionally, as noted, our ACPs play a large role in training not only our Medpace team, but also the site staff on key aspects of the trial to ensure data around all endpoints is collected and processed correctly. This includes how to collect waist and hip circumference measurement, how to collect weight, and as we start to see more obesity trials, including additional assessments that may not be as quote unquote standard assessments in an obesity trial, such as a 6-minute walk test, a hand grip strength test, etc., the involvement in training support from our ACP team really becomes more valuable at that point. And lastly, regarding endpoint protection, our ACPs collaborate and work closely with our teams, taking a holistic approach to data reviews and looking at it centrally to identify any trends and our data outliers where our teams may need to shift their focus to ensure that we're not compromising data quality, study-specific endpoints, or subject safety. This is a very key aspect, especially since our obesity trials enroll so quickly. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Corey so we can begin our Q&A roundtable session.
Yes, that's right. Thank you all for that very excellent presentation. As you mentioned, Jennifer, we are now ready to begin the Q&A portion of the event. And as we do so, I invite the audience to continue sending their questions or comments. Just a reminder, if you're attending via GoToWebinar, please use the questions chat box. And for those of you watching on LinkedIn Live events, feel free to post your comments using the comments tab. It does look like we already have received some audience questions, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one that's come in here. So this question here is asking, with so many studies actively recruiting, how do you set a study apart to be appealing to sites and patients?
So that's a great question. This is Jen. I can start that, and then Amanda, Prue, feel free to jump in. As Amanda noted at the beginning of the talk, the obesity population is growing very rapidly and very extensive. And at this point, even despite the number of actively recruiting studies, the fact that they recruit so fast, there's always an opportunity for more patients to get into a new one. We haven't seen that impact sites or their interest to participate in these studies, nor at this point have we seen it impact our recruitment rates. In terms of setting it apart to be appealing, I think honestly, without giving away all of our secrets, the best way to really set a study apart from the competition is truly sponsor involvement and engagement with the investigators and site staff from the beginning. That is very successful. It's a key differentiator, and it really then, that engagement and enthusiasm trickles down from that investigator and site staff to the patients.
Okay,
Thanks,
great,
Jen.
excellent. Oh, sorry, I cut you off. Amanda,
no, that's quite all right, Corey. I just wanted to chime in from our perspective too. I think Jen brings some fantastic points up, particularly from an operations standpoint. And I think the continuation of that is when you have sponsors who are passionate about their product, there's something unique about that, right? And looking at it from a patient perspective, find out what that unique thing is, and then find the audience where that meets. And so I think naturally, to Jen's point, when your sponsor is excited, it makes it easier to find people who want to be a part of that, but really identifying what's unique about it, and then finding the population that is really suited to that.
Great, excellent. Thank you both for the insight on that question. We do have another question here from the audience. This one is asking about how you've indicated that there may be a high interest in participation. Does this create any challenges when there's lots of interest there? How do you handle any challenges that come with that?
Again, I'll go ahead and jump in from a ClinOps perspective first on this one. That's a great question. I assume the question is asking in terms of high interest in participation among the patients. This can also be overwhelming for our sites. So when recruitment starts, noting that these studies do enroll so quickly, and our sites are trying to get all these patients in quickly, that can cause frustration and challenges. And from a Medpace perspective, we totally understand that and try to work to set our sites up for success from the beginning. And therefore, we typically recommend throttling recruitment at least for the first few weeks. And that really ensures from a site perspective that they're working out all of the kinks. They really have a solid understanding of the protocol, all of the required assessments, and understanding even down to how long does data entry take into the EDC system for a single visit, and really mapping that out so that they can set themselves up for success on once we do open recruitment and don't do that throttle anymore, how long does it really take to do one patient for one visit? And then noting from there, how many patients can I successfully bring in per week, not to be overwhelmed. So really just setting the sites up from success in the beginning with that throttle.
And Jen, this is Prue. I would also like to add, just from the ACP's perspective, also just offering our support to the sites. To be there to help answer questions in real time, any protocol related questions they may have, any issues with some of the assessments that need to be performed, just being there to sort of provide that guidance and reassurance also can be helpful for sites.
Great, excellent. Thank you all for your insight on that one. We've got lots of questions incoming from the audience. We really appreciate the participation. This next question here is asking about what are your strategies to keep placebo patients on other than potential crossover options to a therapeutic agent? If anyone want to take that one?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in first for Amanda. Go ahead and chime in. That is a great question. I know sometimes we can't always do that crossover or offer that open label extension. And really it comes down to, again, that enthusiasm of the investigator when they're trying to sell the science to the patient and actually explaining to this patient, you may be on the placebo arm, but you're part of a larger picture and you're helping bring this drug to phase 3 and then to market where you will have the ability to then be on this medication. Additionally, we also offer milestone incentives to our patients. So if you complete this study, then maybe after at the end of the study, we can offer a gym membership. Or if you complete so many visits, we can offer here's a water bottle or a blanket. And those retention items really go a long way, we see, with those patients that may be randomized to that placebo arm. So Prue or Amanda, from your perspective, anything else to add there?
I'll chime in on this one too. I think we touched on it a little bit in my last slide, but I think part of it is using this time to work with the patient too. Weight loss is a journey. These patients are on a journey, and this is one phase of it. And they aren't new, unfortunately, to frustrations in a lack of weight loss oftentimes. And so using this opportunity to interact with the patients from a site perspective, to really identify some of those lifestyle changes that they can make after the study is done. A lot of these studies are short, 12 weeks or so. So really using that time to engage with them, knowing that in a very short period of time, they're going to be able to really capitalize on this education and these changes and make those changes. And I would really echo Jen's point about helping patients understand the process of drug development and their role in this, even if they are on a placebo, that they may not experience the benefit right today. But as we get these drugs to market, they will become more available. The more that we get out there, the better opportunity that they will have to use those just in everyday practice.
Excellent. Thank you again for all of that insight. Lots more questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can with the time that we have left here. This question actually really caught my eye as well, because I think it speaks to a pretty hot topic around the industry these days. Question was asking if you can speak to how GLP-1 use is impacting recruitment and retention now that these products are, they're becoming so much more widely available.
I'll start on this one. So I think we have to acknowledge that there's going to be an impact. And I think that's first. I think if we try to pretend that they're not going to impact recruitment and retention, then we're setting ourselves up for frustration. So I think we have to realize that there is probably going to be an impact, particularly if the study requires a subject to be naive. So if they have never been able to take a GLP-1 prior to study participation, that's going to start to limit your pool. Although, remember we discussed earlier about, unfortunately, how big this problem is. We have a lot of people globally who are living with obesity. So our pool is rather deep and large. And so we do have patients that will be limited if we restrict participation, if there are certain comorbidities or if they've been on certain treatments. We will see an impact. I don't believe that we're seeing a significant impact yet. And so I think it's more of a forward-thinking problem. I think we need to start thinking about considerations for potentially not restricting for lifetime use of GLP-1s. Maybe set a time frame for when they may not have been able to be used. So 6 months, 9 months, but thinking more of it as a time frame that they will have to have washed off before they would be able to participate in the study could be a good alternative to just complete GLP-1 naive.
Great, thank you so much, Amanda. We have, as I was saying, lots of questions have come in. I'm gonna hit the next one here. This audience member is asking, how do you convince someone on the placebo arm to remain on the study versus then leaving the study and taking an already available drug? I know we kind of hit the placebo a couple of questions ago, but I think this is an interesting one. How do you convince someone to stay when there's an already available drug out there if they could leave the study?
I can jump in and take this one first. So I think we kind of touched on that a little bit with a previous question. And again, it's really just that investigator being very involved and having that conversation with that patient about being part of that larger picture. And while you may be on placebo, still encouraging that involvement and encouraging them that you're still receiving lifestyle counseling on a regular basis by being a part of this trial. Depending on the study's design, you may be seeing that physician weekly or biweekly, so you're having more oversight and care from a physician perspective. So I think those are really key aspects and great points to remind that patient of, even though they may think that they're on the placebo arm.
Jen, that's a great point. And continuing on with that, a patient may think initially that they're on a placebo arm, and even though we do typically see a lot of these medications that we are seeing quick results, not everyone sees results right away. And so I think encouraging them to stick with it, even though they may believe early on that they're on a placebo arm, maybe they will continue to see results. We don't know if they are. And so encouraging them to hang in with it. Oftentimes, like Jen mentioned earlier, we may have milestone gifts. There might be incentives for their participation in PROs. There might be incentives for them to retain in the study, in addition to, like Jen mentioned, just that additional support and guidance. A part of obesity management really comes in with support. And so having more oversight with the physician, with dietitians on the site, with team members, that attention and that focus can go a long way as well.
Great, excellent. And Amanda, you just mentioned PROs in your response there, and that's actually a perfect segue to another question that we have here from the audience. This question is sort of a two-part question. First part of it being mentioning that PROs, they can be a challenge, and the audience member is wondering how you mitigate any issues with patient compliance. And then I guess the second part to this question would be, does Medpace ever procure electronic devices for subject use to support enrollment when ePRO is required?
I can jump in on this one. So yeah, so part of what makes the PRO so challenging, so a lot of times, is the usability of the product. So if the system is difficult to use or the questions don't make sense to the patient, then they're not going to use the program. So again, using a patient-centric approach, working with our internal team to make the programming as user-friendly as possible, many of these challenges can be avoided. And as a result of that, we have seen increased participation and adherence amongst patients. And yes, we do have established processes in place to provide necessary electronic devices. We know that some patients don't have cell phones, or they don't have the capability to, be able to access these programs. So we do have a program in place where we can send devices directly to the sites, and they're already set up and ready to use by the patients.
And I think just adding on to that, Prue, is keeping it simple, right? Don't ask information that isn't needed from an analysis or patient safety perspective just to ask the question. The more simple and less time the patient actually has to use the diary or the ePro, it actually increases your compliance. So really keeping those questions simple if you're going to use one at all.
I'm going to add to this too. I think we'll all jump in on this one. We do this often. That especially this last part that Jen mentioned, we think we want to know everything at once. With similar to what we talked about with the schedule of assessments, we want to know all the information right now. But patients get frustrated when it's question after question after question. So really looking at it from their perspective and making sure that we prioritize what we need. And keep it friendly from their perspective goes a long way.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate all three of you chiming in on that one. I do think we actually just have time now for one more question here, and maybe we can get all three of you to chime in again on this one. This audience member is asking about how do Medpace study teams support the clinical sites in being successful upon their selection for an obesity trial?
Good question. We know that our sites are crucial in a successful trial execution, and so we work with our operations, the ACPs work with our operations colleagues early phases of feasibility to ensure that we have the necessary criteria on our questionnaires. So when we're looking at the feasibility questionnaires for sites, we really want to make sure, do we have everything we need on there so that a site is set up for success for their participation. And then once that site's chosen, we have several other supports in place. Some ways that I have personally supported sites is participation in training. So during investigator meetings, establishing connections with site team members so that you really open up communication and establish some rapport there, and they know who you are and that you're there to support them throughout the study. And having a face with a name goes a long way, so that when something comes up, it's not just an email box that they're sending a question to, but really a person that they can reach out to for clarification on a protocol, or even just a question in general about how something's going to be done as far as an assessment. Anything that pops up, it really goes a long way in that communication back and forth between us and the site.
Yeah, just jumping in from a ClinOps perspective, again, I know I already touched on it again with a previous question, but that throttling enrollment, I think that really helps set our sites up to be successful from the beginning and then throughout the life of that obesity trial. Additionally, I think another point, and then working closely with our sponsors on this one, is really setting that EDC system up to only capture data that's necessary for analysis. I think that's huge, and limiting the number of CRFs that you have for this study to ensure that we're not bogging down these sites with all these extra CRFs for all this extra data where it's taking time away that they could be spending seeing the patients and screening more additional patients. So I think that in turn then really helps set our sites up to be successful in these trials as well.
Fantastic. Thank you all for your insight through that. I think that was an excellent Q&A session, and thank you to our audience members who sent in questions. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of the session, but rest assured, if we couldn't attend to your questions, or if you have any further questions, you can get in touch with the team at Medpace using the contact info that I've just shared up there on screen, and they'll have a chance to follow up with you after the webinar. I do thank everyone once again for participating today. If you're attending via GoToWebinar, I've added a link in the chat box where you'll be able to view the recording of this event, and you can share this link with your colleagues so that they may register to view it as well. You'll also be receiving a follow-up email from XTalks, and after we wrap things up here, a survey window will appear on your screen. Your participation in the survey is always appreciated, as it does help us to improve our webinars. For those of you watching on LinkedIn Live, we encourage you to create an account on xtalks.com and register for this event, which not only gives you access to today's recording, but to our entire library of free content, including other webinars, editorial articles, video interviews, podcasts, and much more. Now, please join me once again in thanking our speakers for their excellent presentation. Amanda, Prudence, Jennifer, it was a pleasure hearing you chat today, and we hope our audience found it informative, and we wish you all a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.